Have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Pat Connolly, and for the next hour I'll be reading from current issues of the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From the front page of the Niagara Gazette of Wednesday, May 27th, Pantry Demand on the Rise. Food pantries. Local organizations report recent uptick in clients, by Robert Creenan. With inflation inching higher and federal cuts to the SNAP program taking root, more and more people are turning to local food pantries. For Bonnie Schaefer, the director of the North Tonawanda Interchurch Food Pantry, its increases have mainly come from seniors who are on a fixed income or are impacted by healthcare costs. Quoting, "The economy impacts how much their income stretches out," Schaefer said, noting food inflation and losing jobs can have an impact as well. This North Tonawanda pantry serves roughly 200 city families monthly. They are allowed to come once a month after using food stamps or any other assistance. While that number is up from years past, the family situations vary depending on whether they have children. Based on 2024 data, 2.9 million New Yorkers, or 15% of the state population, received SNAP benefits, with 52% of them being families with children. So that would be 52% of the 2.9 million. That number has decreased to 2.79 million as of February 2026, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Nationwide in 2024, 41.7 million Americans, or 12% of the population, received SNAP benefits. Heart, Love, and Soul in Niagara Falls has seen an explosion of food pantry meals. Has seen an explosion of food pantry meals given out over the past several years, with its numbers rising by 135% since the COVID-19 pandemic. Available reports show that the number rises from 38,436 such meals in 2021 to 82,548 in 2024. The number of meals served in its dining room area also went up from 37,433 in 2022 to 43,219 in 2024. For the first 4 months of 2026, usage has gone up by 5% over the same stretch in 2025, with between 15 and 20 households using it per day. Their dining room sees between 100 and 150 people a day. Heart, Love, and Soul. These numbers vary based on the time of the month, said Mark Betzold, Heart, Love, and Soul's executive director. The end of the month sees higher numbers as many people have expended cash and SNAP benefits by that time. Betzold said that their service area is roughly even between white and black families, but their demographic data shows that food insecurity disproportionately impacts residents of color. They also assume that housing costs and inflation are driving more vulnerable households into deeper poverty. Out in a more rural part of the county, the Newfane Community Food Pantry has had a steady 60 families a month visit, including seniors, but they have assisted some new families recently. Usually it's because they're having a hard time making ends meet with the economy today, said Coordinator Kathy Phillips, with the pantry serving the Newfane School District. The inflation that always seems to hit food prices hard is impacting the amount of food they have, with the food coming in from donations and local stores. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that SNAP cuts in H.R. 1 would amount to nearly $187 billion through 2034, the largest in its history. Starting March 31st, new work requirements were implemented for those receiving SNAP benefits. These changes are expected to throw 3.5 million to 4 million people off these benefits, though Betzold said not enough time has passed to gauge the full impact. In New York State, 1 in 5 people eligible for SNAP are not receiving benefits, Betzold said. These trends will almost certainly increase pressure on food pantries in our community in the coming months. Last year, during the 43-day-long government shutdown from October through mid-November, residents on SNAP benefits temporarily lost them, with the County Department of Social Services directing recipients toward food pantries during that time. The Niagara Falls Salvation Army said its food pantry stocks were dangerously low in late October. End of article. Still from the front page of the May 27th Niagara Gazette, Rewilding the Canal, the Erie Canal. Native aquatic plants restoration looks to help fish fight invasive species, by Heidi Truschel Light. Most people find aquatic plants kind of creepy, like the tentacles of some freshwater kraken, waiting to pull them underwater. Yeah. Lindsay Yoder, Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator for the State Department of Environmental Conservation, Region 9, is busy separating the good water plants from the bad. As part of a cutting-edge planting project based at the North Tonawanda Botanical Garden, Yoder seeks to rewild the Erie Canal this summer while fighting invasive water weeds. After collecting and growing native water plants from the Niagara River at the Botanical Gardens greenhouses, Yoder said the native plants are added to the Erie Canal to reclaim shallow areas where invasive species are removed. On Tuesday, Yoder and her team planted Vallisneria americana, also known as water celery or eelgrass, in the North Tonawanda and Amherst sections of the canal. I think that would be Tonawanda Creek as well. She said aquatic plantings are planned for Lockport later this season. That's canal only. The idea would be to create more habitat for fish and improve fishing, Yoder said. That has been a pretty common concern for people lately. We've seen and heard anecdotally that fishing has improved with the change in vegetation. We also want to support wildlife like waterfowl. Starting in 2024, Yoder's work in the canal also aims to develop a proof of concept and protocols for the state for reintroducing aquatic plants so that others may implement the practices. We are dealing with invasive hydrilla, Yoder said of the target plant for removal. When you go in and treat them, you're left with these open spaces. We determined that restoration needed to be an integrated party or our We determined that restoration needed to be an integrated party, or, I think this or means or else, our invasive species control. Hydrilla, whose strands resemble bottle brushes, was allegedly first introduced to American waterways after an aquarium dealer shipped it from Sri Lanka in the 1950s. After deciding the shipment couldn't be sold, the dealer dumped them into a Florida canal where the plants took hold. Vallisneria creates long chains of plants under the water through runners, Yoder said. I will abbreviate this article at this point, and if you would like to hear the remainder of it, please call the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 716-821-5555, and staff will read the remainder of the article to you. Turning now to the front page of the Thursday, May 28th Niagara Gazette. Gun investigation. Niagara Falls. 2 in custody after police chase. Discovery of firearms. 2 people were taken into custody by Niagara Falls police on Wednesday afternoon. That would be the previous day, May 27th. On Wednesday afternoon, following a brief foot chase and the discovery of 2 guns. An officer in the 500 block of 20th Street reported seeing a person sought for questioning in a gun-related incident on Tuesday, walking with another person Wednesday afternoon. When the officer attempted to stop the 2 males, an adult and a youth, they instead both started running toward 21st Street. The officer noted that the youth was wearing a backpack as he fled. Additional officers were called into the area and after a search located 2 males matching the description of the 2 that had fled, walking on the 2400 block of Ferry Avenue. The backpack was no longer with them, officers said, and both individuals were detained while police investigated. Officers searched the area where they had originally run from police and, following their path, eventually recovered a magazine from a gun in a backyard. 2 firearms were then found between 2 garages behind a residence in the 500 block of 21st Street. Based on the investigation, it was determined that the detained individuals were the same 2 males who fled from officers, and they had discarded the 2 guns that were found. A crime scene detective responded to collect the firearms. Charges against the adult and youth are pending. Still from the front page of the Thursday, May 28th Niagara Gazette. Ontario Mayor talks Major Falls investment. Development would impact both sides of the border, by Mark Scheer and Rick Pfeiffer. A top Canadian official told a local radio station host this week that talks are underway with a foreign investment group interested in spending big bucks to help grow the economy on both sides of the border in Niagara Falls. During an appearance Tuesday on the Viewpoint talk show hosted by Tom Darrow on WEBR AM 1440, Niagara Falls, Ontario, Mayor Jim Diodati said a major foreign investment group planning to invest billions in his community is also very interested in getting involved in redevelopment efforts in the United States. Diodati told Darrow of the radio station he had a telephone call planned for later in the day on Tuesday with Niagara Falls Mayor Robert Restaino and a representative from the group of foreign investors. Diodati said he was unable to discuss specifics of the investors' interest due to a non-disclosure agreement he signed. I have been talking to Mayor Diodati for some weeks about a development that would straddle both sides of the border, Restaino said on Wednesday. He said the conversations have been taking place with representatives of an urban economic subcommittee connected to the United Nations. We talked about the possibilities for development, Restaino said. There are international investors and countries that are interested in this kind of development. Restaino said further meetings are planned. They're talking about billions in infrastructure, he said. The city of Niagara Falls is ready to be a partner. Diodati described the investment group's interest in Niagara Falls, Ontario as being tied to Ontario Premier Doug Ford's Destination Niagara strategy. Unveiled by Ford and other Ontario officials in December, the strategy sets out a bold vision for growing the tourism economy in the Falls and across the provinces of Ontario through at least $1 billion worth of investment aimed at creating a Las Vegas of the North. The Falls, Ontario mayor also said the investment group in question wants to do business on the American side of the border as well. They see the benefits of investing in both sides of the Falls, Diodati said. The interest from the major foreign investor comes as Niagara Falls, Ontario continues its own investments. Diodati said his city has $50 million in bridge, roads, and other infrastructure maintenance and upgrade projects in the works. He said his city continues to benefit from investments from the province of Ontario and Niagara Parks, which is responsible for maintenance and beautification efforts within the city's parks system. It's the goose that lays the golden eggs, Diodati said of tourism. You need to give that goose the best food, the best water, the best everything, because that's the goose that's going to give you the best eggs. End article. A less optimistic article from page 4 of the Thursday, May 28th, 2028. Niagara Falls warns property owners of possible foreclosure. City looks to collect millions in unpaid taxes, issues a June 30th deadline. Thousands of Niagara Falls property owners face foreclosure as city officials launch an effort to collect millions in delinquent taxes. City officials say they are issuing approximately 3,000 foreclosure warning letters to property owners who are behind in their taxes. It's estimated that delinquent property taxes total in the millions of dollars in the city. Property owners that do not make payment in full by June 30th will see their properties enter foreclosure. The amount of outstanding property taxes is almost 1/3 of our total 2026 fiscal year budget. So even recouping a portion of the outstanding amount due to the city, even recouping a portion of the outstanding amount due to the city would have significant and positive impact on our budget outlook, Mayor Robert Restaino said. This is a matter that is not unique to Niagara Falls, as cities across the region and the state face the same dilemma of property owners who are not making property tax payments, leaving municipalities with no choice but to foreclose on properties. End quote. The letters issued by the City of Niagara Falls Billing and Collections Department requires that property owners and payment for all The letters issued by the City of Niagara Falls Billing and Collections Department requires that property owners send payment for all city taxes owed since 2023, as well as unpaid prior years. Payments must be made in full, with checks paid to the order of the city controller. The letter also requires that property owners pay all outstanding school taxes for 2024 and 2025 and unpaid prior years, with checks payable to the order of the school district treasurer. There is no further grace period, and if payments are not made by June 30th, the properties will be foreclosed, Restaino said. The city will then auction those properties through a competitive bidding process. For more information, contact the Billing and Collections Department at 716-286-4350. 716-286-4350. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Now from inside the Thursday, May 28th Niagara Gazette, some restaurant news. Brownie's custard stand in Olcott remains closed after Monday fire. Heidi Truchot Light, Olcott. The wall at Brownie's custard stand is boarded up, and the restaurant remains closed for the immediate future after a fire damaged the kitchen wall. Eileen Nyson, co-owner of the food and ice cream business, said her staff texted her at about 7 p.m. on Monday to say customers reported smoke. Customers saw smoke coming out of the building, but it wasn't smoky inside, Nyson said. The heat from the grill probably heated the wall, and the fire started in the exterior wall, so it was smoldering in there all day. Nyson had been working at the Wilson business location when it happened. It was so busy at both places, she said. Memorial Day is typically the busiest day of the year. I got here, Olcott, around the same time the fire department did. They had to break open the side of the building and put a hole through it to put the fire inside the wall out. The town of Newfane owns the Lakeview Village shops, where Nyson said she leases the space for Brownies. She didn't know how long the building would be closed for estimates and repairs, but said she hoped to reopen soon. I'm hoping that it's only going to be a week, but we have to wait for the repairs to be done and the health department to inspect, Nyson said. We asked if we could just do ice cream, and the town said if we had a clearance from the health department, we could. Nyson said she has contacted the health department to find out about inspection. Meanwhile, Nyson said business is good at Brownies in Wilson, and she encourages customers to stop by that location. Still in restaurant news, Lockport Seafood Shack offers something new. Lockport. Eatery opens its doors at former AJ's Hot Dogs on Lock Street. Heidi Truchot Light, Lockport. Anyone can get a taste of the seaside downtown with this week's opening of the Lockport Seafood Shack at 20 Lock Street. Owner John George has renamed the former AJ's Hot Dogs and expanded the menu to include lobster, shrimp, clam, and oyster takeout dishes. George said he wanted to offer something unique to Lockport. I'm a seafood guy, George said. I lived in Boston for years. Chef Dennis Garver has cooked up a variety of lobster roll choices, including lobster fried in Mexican street corn breading and a California lobster roll with lemon mayo and avocado. George said that after lobster, his favorite is shrimp, with the restaurant offering a Cajun tossed. Okay. A Cajun tossed fried shrimp poor boy. The restaurant will continue to serve hot dogs, hamburgers, and other traditional favorites. The Lockport Seafood Shack will be open from Wednesday to Saturday each week from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday hours are 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Turning now to some tourism news in the Friday, May 29th Niagara Gazette. Port of Niagara? Cruise ship's arrival signals new era for Niagara Falls tourism. A day trip to Niagara Falls is now officially part of a cruise ship itinerary. For the first time in decades, on Thursday, a cruise ship, the American Patriot, sailed into western New York, docking near the Erie Basin Marina in Buffalo as part of the inaugural Great Lakes cruise. Today, passengers from the cruise ship will take part in an excursion to Niagara Falls to experience the state park and other local attractions. Destination Niagara, USA will conduct a brief ceremony upon their arrival. The arrival of the 130-passenger American Patriot was met with much fanfare on Thursday. This next paragraph will include quite a lot of page-turning noise. Today we are embarking on a new chapter for Buffalo's waterfront, Governor Kathy Hochul said, as we welcome the American Patriot. We are bringing new visitors, new revenue, and a new sense of pride to Buffalo. This is the first of many arrivals that will showcase our world-class cultural institutions like the AKG and the Darwin Martin House to travelers from across the country. We are proving once again that Buffalo is a premier destination, and with our future cruise terminal on the horizon, the best is yet to come for the Great Lakes. That was Kathy Hochul. This year, American Cruise Lines is running 7 cruises that embark or disembark from Buffalo. The 9-day, 8-night Great Lakes and Thousand Islands cruise that operates between Syracuse and Buffalo and explores the Thousand Islands, Lake Ontario, and Lake Erie, and the company's signature 800-mile, 14-day, 13-night American Great Lakes cruise that operates between Buffalo and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and explores Lake Erie, Lake Huron, and Lake Michigan. Both cruises have reverse itineraries available, and most dates in 2026 are already sold out. Dates for 2027 and 2028 have already been set and are available to book now. And I'll cut that article there. If you would like to hear the rest of it, please call Niagara Falls Radio Reading Service at 716-821-5555, and a staff member will be happy to read the remainder of the article to you. Still from the front page of the Friday, May 29th Niagara Gazette, $125 million project targeted for Buffalo Avenue in Niagara Falls. Developer's plan features residential, retail, and entertainment elements. A Niagara Falls hotel and hospitality developer is preparing to file plans for a $125 million mixed-use project on Buffalo Avenue in Niagara Falls. Element Development, the parent company of RuPaul Hospitality, the operators of several hotel and motel properties in the city, is looking to develop more than 200 apartments, 100 condominiums, along with restaurants and retail shops on a collection of properties just south of the Marriott Courtyard Hotel. RuPaul is currently constructing a $14 million expansion of that hotel. $14 million. The new project has been dubbed the Gateway because its proposed location is at the entrance of the city's Gateway District, just off the Niagara Scenic Parkway. The existence of the project was first reported by the Buffalo Business First newspaper. Nirel Patel, the president of Element Development, was not immediately available to comment on his company's plans. Falls Mayor Robert Restaino said he was aware of the proposed development, but confirmed that no site plans have been filed with the city's planning department. I think they have been putting a number of properties together for this project, the mayor said, and they were waiting for the alienation of Porter Park to be approved by the city council. Porter Park was the last piece to connect it all. At its meeting on May 20th, the council approved the transfer of the 1.73-acre park at 951 Buffalo Avenue, which is home to a historic 50-ton naval cannon. The cannon, owned by the city, will be retained and maintained by RuPaul as part of a permanent public plaza connected to Element's Gateway project. In a memo to council members, Restaino recommended the property transfer, writing that it was in support of developing the Gateway District's main point of entry. The mayor said he has had discussions with Patel about the proposed project. He said Patel indicated to him that he had private financing available to back the development. The plans called for the construction of 4 buildings totaling 469,000 square feet, including 3 8-story towers with 225 market-rate apartments and 100 condos. The tower's height would allow residents to have bird's-eye views unavailable elsewhere of the upper Niagara River and the cataracts. The project also calls for a parking ramp, retail, and event space. Restaino said Patel has also discussed on-site fitness facilities and other amenities for tenants. He's really looking to include a lot of things that people look for, but haven't always been a part of residential developments in the past, the mayor said. From page 2 of the Friday, May 29th issue of the Niagara Gazette, radioactive waste barred from Michigan landfill. Niagara Falls storage site cleanup touched off resident firestorm. A judge has permanently put a stop to the transfer of waste, such as contaminated soil and concrete, from the Niagara Falls storage site in Lewiston to a Michigan landfill. The Van Buren Township landfill is barred from accepting shipments of radioactive waste from Manhattan Project-era sites, a Wayne County Circuit Court judge ruled on Wednesday. Judge Kevin Cox's order, issued following a February bench trial, sides with Wayne County and communities that sued Wayne Disposal by making an August 6, 2025 preliminary injunction permanent. The injunction bars the shipments of elevated radiation waste from sites managed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to Wayne Disposal, which I guess must be in Michigan. Wayne Disposal in Van Buren Township, 25 miles west of Detroit, was one of the few landfills in the U.S. that can handle certain hazardous waste. The facility is owned by Republic Services. The injunction, signed in August, bars Wayne Disposal from accepting waste from Lewiston as well as Lucky, Ohio, Middletown, Iowa, Deepwater, New Jersey, and St. Louis, Missouri. In the case of the Niagara Falls storage site, 6,000 cubic yards of waste were instead sent to the Waste Control Specialists facility in Andrews, Texas. The site on the New Mexico border is 68 miles northwest of the nearest major population area of Midland, Odessa, treating and storing low-level radioactive and other hazardous waste. Brent LaSpada, the Niagara Falls storage site project manager, said in August that the change was made in order to keep waste removal on schedule. On Wednesday, Cox said, "The harms from the waste are long-lasting or permanent and cannot be offset with monetary damages, and monitoring and engineering controls at the landfill are insufficient." Acceptance of any additional FUSRAP TENORM, well, maybe they will explain this. These are two acronyms, FUSRAP and TENORM. FUSRAP TENORM. Acceptance of any additional FUSRAP TENORM at the WDI landfill facility would unreasonably interfere with rights common to the public and therefore constitutes a public nuisance, Cox wrote, referring to elevated radiation waste known as TENORM from formerly utilized, this is the explanation of the FUSRAP acronym, formerly utilized sites remedial action program, FUSRAP, sites managed by the Army Corps of Engineers. Republic Services disagrees with Cox's decision and will appeal it, spokesperson Roman Blahowski told Planet Detroit in an email. Wayne Disposal, Inc. is a safe, well-managed facility that is specifically engineered to handle Fusrap Tenorm and other complex waste streams, Blahowski said. This ruling sets a troubling precedent that undermines protections afforded to interstate commerce and impedes site remediation, as well as the safe and effective long-term management of these materials for customers in Michigan and throughout the country. The legal battle over the shipments of elevated radiation waste began in 2024 after it was revealed the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers planned to transport waste from the Niagara Falls storage site in Lewiston to Wayne Disposal in western Wayne County, Michigan. Belleville, Van Buren Township, Canton Township, Romulus, and the Van Buren Township are... can't read this. Just a minute. Something's wrong with the print. Apparently, these townships' fire chief filed suit in September 2024 to stop the shipments, and Wayne County intervened in the case. Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy approved a 23%, $5.2 million cubic yard expansion of the facility in January, despite vocal pushback from residents and lawmakers. In Wednesday's order, Cox cited substantial and credible testimony from Dr. Kimberly Kierfat, a University of Michigan professor and radiation protection expert, who, he said, established that radiation gas levels have increased each year at Wayne Disposal's perimeter monitoring locations since it began accepting Tenorm in 2017. End of article. A more optimistic environmental article from the Friday, May 29th Niagara Gazette, page 4. Pelicans spotted in lake waters off of Olcott only appear briefly in western New York most years. Heidi Truchot Light. 2 white pelicans stopped in at Olcott during the somewhat tropical weather on Tuesday. The pelicans were seen bobbing in the water inside the breakwall to Lake Ontario by Olcott resident Vic Thibault, who snapped a picture. "I have some friends who've seen them in Chautauqua Lake," Thibault said. Although he said he's not a birder who checks off sightings from a list, he enjoys seeing the birds he recognizes. "The eagles are all coming back, and the osprey are out there all the time now," Thibault said. "White pelicans are rare and are usually observed annually for a brief time somewhere in western New York," said Beverly Seiler of the Buffalo Ornithological Society. Last year they were seen on June 11th to the 14th. Seiler said the pelicans last June were seen in Wilson and Olcott. Brett Ewald, a Ransomville native who is director of Cape May Bird Observatory in New Jersey, said, In western New York, they're kind of an uncommon wandering bird. They probably show up in western New York not quite every year, but show up somewhere at least every couple of years. Sometimes it's a small group, sometimes an individual, but often it's small groups up to 6 or 8. It's a bird really of the West. They breed out in the West and Midwest Canada and in winter all across the far southern U.S. from Florida to Texas to California. But they don't really breed anywhere east of the Mississippi. It's a great bird to see. They'll show up in places like Iroquois, Montezuma, along the lakes, the Niagara River, places like that. Turning now to the Saturday and Sunday edition of the Niagara Gazette, May 30th, 31st. Front page, top of the page, town supervisor optimistic for fashion outlets. County tax incentives could help stabilize mall amid declining Canadian visits. Robert Creenan. Despite fashion outlets of Niagara, USA, the shopping plaza, despite Fashion Outlets of Niagara, USA, seeking out county tax incentives to help navigate a drop in customer traffic, largely from Canada. Town of Niagara Supervisor Sylvia Virtuoso is confident the mall can rebound. We have had times where that dropped, Virtuoso said of border traffic. She said she's hopeful for a change in attitudes that's been keeping Canadian shoppers away. Being a border town, we love them, love the Canadians. She added that they do get enough tourists coming in to support the mall, while needing to encourage locals to shop there, as it also faces fewer customers due to e-commerce. The mall's parent company, Macerich, has applied for $17 million in Niagara County Industrial Development Agency tax incentives this month to help it through this rough time. The agency board granted preliminary approval with a public hearing needed before they rule on final approval in June. The town of Niagara had also renegotiated its pilot agreements with the mall, replacing two existing pilots. It apparently is an acronym, pilot. Replacing two existing pilots that were due to expire in 2027 and 2030. It would provide $10.07 million to taxing jurisdictions over the next 10 years, with Macerich paying a $350,000 host community payment and $600,000 in tax payments, increasing by 2% each year. The host community agreements would be the same, while the pilots would be worth half of what they were before. Macerich representatives at this month's IDA meeting said these incentives were imperative to the mall's stability. The company also has a $76.4 million loan balance payment due October 1st. $76.4 million loan balance payment due October 1st, with reps saying a settlement with lenders was imminent. Fashion Outlets usually contributes more than 50% of the county's sales tax amount, which ends up getting distributed among the municipalities. Last year, Niagara County collected $178.4 million in overall sales tax in 2025, according to the State Comptroller's report on local sales taxes. Any potential closures of the mall would go beyond the nearly 800 jobs there and the loss of sales tax. It would impact all the other restaurants and businesses that line the Military Road corridor. They draw in people to the mall all the time, Virtuoso said. They are vital to Niagara County. She's speaking of the restaurants and businesses on the Military Road shopping corridor. The mall which first opened in 1982 and had its last major expansion in 2014, lists more than 100 stores, kiosks, and food vendors present there, but more than a third of leases are set to expire this year. It reportedly had a 71% occupancy rate through the first 9 months of 2025. The mall had lost at least 15 retailers over the past few years, including Saks off 5th and Eddie Bauer, though a new clothing store, Urban Planet, opened there earlier this month. Fashion Outlets has been suffering from fewer Canadian shoppers, as part of the general Canadian boycott against the United States, with international visitors making up 20% to 30% of their business. Other top countries of origin visiting the mall are the United Kingdom, China, India, and Germany. The Canadian dollar has also been weakening against the US dollar, with $1 Canadian roughly equal to 72 cents US. The public hearing for the IDA incentives will be at 2:30 p.m. Tuesday at Niagara Town Hall. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Still in the Saturday and Sunday issue of the Niagara Gazette, May 30th and 31st, a kind of interesting article about a wildflower, which I hope you won't mind my reading, but it's a very fragrant and pretty wildflower called Dame's Rocket. Roadside Dame's Rocket flower has 250 years of history. Heidi Truschel Light. Many of the flowers now bursting into color at the side of the road are the legacy of the nation's European settlers 250 years ago. Whether white, yellow, or pink, these mid-spring blooms are related literally as members of the mustard family. Although histories don't pinpoint an exact date or settler who is responsible, the plants can be traced back to the 1600s in North America, introduced as medicinal herbs, flavorings, and garden beauties. With yellow mustard blossoms now waning, the violet and white shades of Dame's Rocket, Hesperus matronalis, are making a show in Niagara County. Hesperus matronalis being the Latin name for Dame's Rocket. Some people look at it as a wildflower, while others consider it an invasive, said John Farfalia, horticulturist for Cornell Cooperative Extension of Niagara County. I think it's very pretty. I'm not aware of anyone restricting it. It reseeds fairly easily. I don't know if I've ever seen it as one of the really aggressive ones. It's probably somewhat limited by mowing. I know they've got to be on a New York State invasive list. As an introduced plant from Europe and Asia, Dame's Rocket is considered invasive in New York, but is not listed on the Department of Environmental Conservation's prohibited plant list. I wouldn't put it in the same category as the very invasive stuff like honeysuckle that takes over natural habitats, Farfalia said. According to the Harvesting History website, the plants were introduced into North America during colonial times and were a popular cottage garden flower because of their beauty and their heavy, sweet fragrance, which was most notable at sunset. The site said in an 1851 flower gardening book Joseph Breck wrote, "The single varieties of this fragrant flower are common in most gardens. It's a biennial or imperfect perennial, easily raised from seeds, producing flowers the second year, in May and June, of various shades from pure white to purple. The double varieties of this flower are superb and highly esteemed for their fragrance and beauty." And I'll cut that article there. But if you are interested in a guide to New York invasive plants, there is a website which, it's almost impossible to read this. I think if you'd like to know this website, you'd do best to call the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and a staff member will read the website address to you. The phone number here is, where did it go? 716-821-5555. Moving on now to the Tuesday, June 2nd issue of the Niagara Gazette. Fatal crash investigated. 1 dead, 1 critical, after collision at Boulevard and Military Road. A Niagara Falls woman has died and a city man is clinging to life as a result of a 2-car crash at the intersection of Military Road and Niagara Falls Boulevard Monday morning, June 1st. The grinding crash occurred around 6:28 a.m. when a 2006 Jeep Compass, operated by a 74-year-old Niagara Falls woman, entered the intersection traveling eastbound on Niagara Falls Boulevard. As the Compass passed through the intersection, it collided with a 2012 Toyota RAV4 traveling northbound on Military Road that was operated by a 61-year-old male driver from Niagara Falls. The force of the collision spun both vehicles to the edges of the intersection and caused the airbags in both vehicles to be deployed. Falls Police Traffic Division Crash Investigation Unit, CIU, detectives said a preliminary investigation showed that the driver of the Jeep Compass entered the intersection on a red light. Investigators said bright, early morning sunlight may have been a factor in the crash. Police said both drivers suffered traumatic injuries and were transported by ambulance to Erie County Medical Center in Buffalo. The male driver, who was initially unresponsive, underwent emergency surgery and was listed in critical condition. The female driver, who was alert and talking to paramedics at the crash site, was initially listed as unstable and in critical condition. She died from her injuries late Monday afternoon. Police are withholding her identity pending notification of the family. The intersection was closed for several hours while the crash site was processed by investigators. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Any witnesses are encouraged to call the Falls Police Traffic Division at 716-286-4563 or the non-emergency line at 716-286-4711. Another traffic fatality. Lockport man struck and killed Friday night. State police investigating Sunset Drive crash. Rick Pfeiffer, Lockport. New York State Police investigated a fatal pedestrian accident in the town of Lockport Friday night. At around 9:33 p.m., troopers received a call for a crash involving a pedestrian on Sunset Drive. After arriving on the scene, troopers said they determined that a vehicle traveling on Sunset Drive had struck an adult male pedestrian. The pedestrian was later identified as Leroy P. Smith, 81, of Lockport. Troopers said they immediately rendered aid to Smith, including CPR, until emergency medical personnel arrived. Smith was transported for medical treatment but was pronounced dead at a medical facility. The operator of the striking vehicle, a 22-year-old resident of Grand Island, remained at the scene of the crash, and troopers said he is cooperating with the investigation. The New York State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation detectives are continuing to probe the circumstances surrounding the crash. Still from the front page of the Tuesday, June 2nd Niagara Gazette, Youngstown's new mayor, trustees sworn in. Mike Daddario, Stephen Suter, and Colleen Somerville elected last month. Article by Robert Creenan. Youngstown's newest officials are now on the job. New mayor Mike Daddario and trustees Stephen Suter and Colleen Somerville were sworn in Monday morning in Village Hall. The 3-1 election 2 weeks ago, with Daddario, or maybe it's Daddario, beating The 3-1 election 2 weeks ago, with Daddario beating Deputy Mayor Rick Stortecki and Somerville defeating Catherine Stella and Mayor Rob Rezeman for trustee seats. I'm excited to work with the great team we have here in the village, Daddario said, a stay-at-home dad having previously worked as a Grand Island history teacher. I'm really happy that this day has come. Suter had previously served 2 terms as a trustee from 2008 to 2016, with him and Somerville looking forward to getting started. So far, Daddario's plans involve assessing where all the department heads stand and making sure they have what they need. He added that the departing Reisman and Stella would be good resources for the new board members going forward. Several village projects in progress, like the Niagara River Greenway bike trail through the village and Porter, and the Riverview Landing condominium project on Nancy Price Drive, will continue as the previous board had planned. Lastly, from page 4 of the Tuesday, June 2nd Niagara Gazette, NT, North Tonawanda, NT looks to extend crypto mining moratorium. DigiPower X reportedly planning cooling system changes at Erie Avenue facility. Robert Creenan. The North Tonawanda City Council plans on extending its moratorium on new cryptocurrency operations and data centers for another 12 months, this time with stipulations. The new moratorium would have a hardship clause that would provide the city with more oversight over potential changes to the DigiPower X facility at 1070 Erie Avenue. If DigiPower X applies for the clause while making any changes, the city can test the noise levels of the new system, not allowing it if it does not meet the city's new noise ordinance levels. In the off chance that it doesn't meet the noise ordinance threshold, we want some control over the changes, said Mayor Austin Tylek, noting the current ordinance does not have any clauses addressing site modifications. The previous moratorium is due to expire on July 16th, having lasted for nearly 2 years, and was put in place to stop any future expansions of DigiPower X's operations. The city is still working on updates to the city's zoning code that would include data center regulations. The city is still working on updates to the city's zoning code that would include data center regulations, feeling that a year would give them enough time to finish. The 123 megawatt crypto mining facility has been in operation since 2022, with residents living near it consistently complaining about the noise emanating from its thousands of fans used to cool the computers. Other complaints revolved around the amount of air pollution emitted, and property values near it have been hurt. DigiPower X reportedly plans to install a water cooling system, which it claims will be quieter as it uses water tubes to cool the computers down rather than thousands of fans. Tylek is optimistic these will be quieter based on the specs he has seen. Hopefully, they get on a path forward to quiet down, Tylek said. Residents who have had to deal with the facility's noise for the past few years do not believe these changes to the facility will be an improvement. One resident at last week's council meeting, Sharon Demers, said she has tracked noise levels every night this past March, each time being above 65 decibels, which is above established limits in the new ordinance passed earlier this year. In my opinion, what they're doing is upgrading right under the moratorium's nose, said Mark Polito, one of the named defendants in a class action suit against DigiPower X. They're not going to put in equipment that's going to quiet anything down. They're going to improve their ability to kick it up a notch. This company from day one has been slimy and snaky, said Jack Koenig. We have to keep a close watch on them. I believe we're playing by the rules, but I don't believe they're playing by the rules. DigiPower X was served 4 noise citations last year, entering a not guilty plea with the then ordinance setting DigiPower X was served 4 noise citations last year, entering a not guilty plea with the then ordinance setting maximum fines at $250. A final court decision has been delayed since last October, with the court allowing DigiPower to go ahead with its water cooling system conversion. The updated noise ordinance passed earlier this year has lowered acceptable noise levels in all kinds of spaces and increased fines for repeat offenders. City Attorney Edward Zabulski recommended that Police Chief Keith Glass be directed to issue more citations under the new ordinance, though none have been issued yet. With the City Council giving its preliminary approval, the extension now goes to the Niagara County Planning Board for its support, with the city then having another public hearing about it before adoption. End of article. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the current issues of the Niagara Gazette, We read from the Niagara Gazette every Saturday at 11 a.m. Your reader has been Pat Connolly. Thank you for listening.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability